Hi guys, welcome to Beyond the Pouch, a podcast series brought to you by Pelican, Eakin and Respond with your hosts Rachel and Louise. Dive into the world of ostomy through open and honest conversations, including the lives of many inspirational ostomates that we're lucky enough to call our friends, so you can get to know them beyond the pouch.
Welcome back for another episode of Beyond the Pouch. If you haven't already listened to the previous 2 episodes, please head over to Spotify or YouTube and give them a listen or a watch. This week, we are very excited to be joined by another guest, Mohammad, who will be discussing his stoma story and his battle with cancer, along with the lack of representation of ethnic minorities. So, hi, Mo.
Hi,
Mo.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.
You're welcome.
And we haven't long met you in person, did we, at the get-together?
No,
with
that was the
Pelican
first
Respond?
time. Yeah.
You jumped in the deep end there. We were sat outside
My own
talking to us.
fault.
It's like, what on earth are they talking about?
But luckily, you were lovely in real life.
Well, I must have made a good impression.
Well,
So
you're
I'm
here.
now.
You made the cut.
It's just sat outside because you was very nervous, wasn't you? And once we all started talking, it was you felt a lot more at ease.
Definitely. I've never done anything like it before. So, yeah, jumping in the deep end.
How did it feel going on your way back home after being around ostomates and spending that time?
I was quite giddy all the way down to Hertfordshire. I thought it was amazing just to see so many people who have the same struggles that I do and to have a conversation representing my stoma as a normal way of life. It was great.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And how did you feel like with regards to like meeting everybody? Because sometimes it can be quite daunting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm autistic, so being in large groups, I tend to shut down. But nonetheless, I thought it was important, far more important to be there.
You smashed it.
You
You wouldn't
smashed
have
it.
thought
It
it was your
was
first
lovely.
event. You
Really?
smashed it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As always, it's quite daunting, isn't it? I mean, from talking to you and reading through your journey and going back through your Instagram posts, is it correct that you was misdiagnosed by 3 doctors prior to your cancer diagnosis?
Yes, I had to visit the doctor 3 times before I demanded a blood test because my GP felt there was nothing more than IBS, but my symptoms were, although similar, but there was one issue whereby I felt these stabbing pains and a lump forming inside of my lower abdomen that was left unanswered.
Gosh.
And I took all the medication that they asked me to take for the course that they suggested, and it didn't work. Things were just getting worse and my symptoms were getting worse and worse. So I felt the need, and my family really pushed me to go back to the doctors and get something done. So once I got that blood test, then it just snowballed.
Okay, because if I'm correct, you went for a colonoscopy. Now, did you go for the colonoscopy due to your blood results, or did you go for the colonoscopy because they previously misdiagnosed you with IBS?
So the colonoscopy was a result of the blood results. I also had to give them a stool sample, which painted quite a vivid picture for my consultant, who then suggested that we should go into a colonoscopy.
Yeah.
And yeah, from that point, he himself thought it was Crohn's, nothing worse than that, but he wanted to be absolutely sure. And I'm thankful for that, because had I not done that, I think things were just escalating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is there is sometimes a lot of correlation between cancer and Crohn's. I mean, I know IBD patients are more prone to bowel cancer as a whole because of obviously the nature of IBD. I mean, how did you feel with regards to your cancer diagnosis? Because it was your colonoscopy, wasn't it, that picked up the tumour?
Yeah, so I started experiencing issues back in October of 2020. Where I first started experiencing those stabbing sensations in my abdomen. Prior to that, I was very, very healthy. I was eating all my greens, smoothies. I was very active. I was cycling, going to the gym. 2 very energetic children who love to be outdoors. And then all of a sudden, I'm on the kitchen floor in pain. Within about 20 seconds, it just passed. So I thought nothing more of it. Got up, shook the residual pain, carried on making my coffee. I honestly thought it was the fact that during that time it was COVID.
Yeah.
And there was that Eat Out to Help Out scheme.
Yeah.
And I may have overindulged and needed to go back to, healthy eating. So out came the bullet blender, started those smoothies again, but it just wasn't working. It was just getting worse and worse. And unfortunately, in the February, my father passed away because of COVID.
Sorry.
So thank you. So at that stage, my health issues just took a back seat. Being Islamic, we have to bury them ideally within 24 hours, but because of the predicament that he passed away with COVID, finding somewhere to house him whilst we get the burial site ready was proving to be an issue. But nonetheless, I think that kind of brought home to the fact that I needed to get myself checked out to figure out what was going on with me. So as I said, I went to the doctors. First occasion, they said it was stress because obviously my father passed away, and working from home and all the other mental health issues. I was just given 4 weeks worth of laxatives.
Gosh.
That didn't work. Went back. That's when they said, it was IBS. It didn't work. It just got worse, as I said. And then finally, after the stool test, it was apparent that I needed intervention. And to kind of paint a picture, the stool test showed inflammation. Now, anything from a cold or say tonsillitis, an infection which you can fight off with antibiotics, is around 200 units. My stool test showed that I had 2,000 units of inflammation. So that's why they felt it needed to be looked into straight away.
So that was the fecal calprotectin.
Yeah.
Yeah. They discovered the tumour during your colonoscopy. How did you feel when you went in for surgery? Because when you went in for surgery, a stoma was mentioned, but it wasn't necessarily what you may wake up with. It was 50-50, wasn't it, before you went in for surgery?
So when I first met my consultant to discuss treatment of cancer and the outcomes, there was a mention of, the possibility of having a stoma. But at that time, the tumour itself wasn't that big, wasn't really something that they were overly concerned with in terms of, really going into detail what it's like to be to what I have now, a stoma bag. But, from the point of chemotherapy, I fell gravely ill after the second round. So that stage I had a staph infection, which was life-threatening. I was kept isolated. I was very delirious, amongst other issues where the infection got into my right lung cavity and started tearing away at the lung wall and forming pockets. So it felt like I couldn't breathe because it was restricting the lung tubes. And then after that, whilst I was being treated through antibiotics, they discovered that my bowel had perforated.
Oh, no.
So it was just bleeding all these toxins into my system. So the antibiotics were fighting off the infection. I'll get better, go home. And there was a stage where I came back 10 hours later because, I had a fever, become delirious and all sorts. So at that point they said, you need to go into surgery. One, because of the bowel perforating, and second is because the tumour had grown to the size of a small watermelon. So it's just pushing up on all my organs. So I was in a lot of pain.
I can imagine.
And so whilst I was being carted down to theatre, I think at that point there was a discussion of having a stoma, but because of my condition, I wasn't really taking anything in at that time.
No, you wouldn't. Not with regards to emergency. I mean, how long was you in hospital for?
So I was in hospital the beginning of July, and then had the surgery at the end of November, went into rehab, and then came out just before Christmas.
God,
wow,
such a long time. And how were your family during that time? Were they able to visit? So hard with children.
Yeah, there were restrictions on visitations. My wife was the only person that could come and see me, and she had an hour, maybe a little bit more, depending on the nurse on duty.
Yeah.
Who could come and see me.
Yeah.
So my children, I was at a stage where I could be put into a chair and wheeled outside. I think I hadn't seen my children for possibly 3 or 4 months, maybe.
Wow.
As I said, I did go home for a short period,
Yeah.
but then I came back in because of feeling unwell. So yeah, it was a difficult period for them.
How did you find, because I know you said to me, because you had the chemotherapy and the stoma and how bad your output was at the time, how did you feel, especially within those first couple of months after having the stoma placed? How did you feel? Because I can imagine that you've had pneumonia, you've had sepsis, you've had surgery, you've then had another surgery to place your stoma bag and to clear out the sepsis. And then they've put you on chemotherapy. How did you feel about having a stoma at that time? Because I should imagine that it was quite daunting.
So coming out of surgery, I was in ICU for a period because the surgery was meant to be 4 hours. It took 7. I got taken out, and whilst my surgeon was on the phone to my wife, I was then red lighted back into theatre because my heart was elevated to the point that I could go into cardiac arrest. So I spent quite some time in ICU, and then I was put into isolation. So I don't remember that. All I remember is waking up in a room and having this bag attached to my abdomen. At that time, I was fighting off sepsis, had pneumonia. There's a point where they had to, because I had the staples holding my abdomen together, they had to take out some of the staples along the bottom to bleed out the infection. So there was so much going on. I couldn't really make sense of it. At the time when the sepsis was treated and the pneumonia as well, at that point I could concentrate on getting used to the bag. And I kind of woke up in a daze to think, am I still dreaming? Is this really me? And it was just fluid at the time because I couldn't eat anything solid. I had 3 tubes going into the side of my neck, one with the food supplement, the other with painkillers, and another for the antibiotics. I had this tube up the nose that goes down to the stomach to stop me from being sick or vomiting. So everything that I was taking in, it was all kind of pushed into this bag, and you had nurses just emptying it into like a bed pan, and then sealing it back up and carrying on with the rest of their day. I think the other thing that I was trying to make sense with was this shooting pain up and down my leg, which was later diagnosed as severe and chronic nerve damage from the surgery.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot going on.
You had to learn to walk again?
Yeah, I couldn't bear any weight on my feet. I think there's a caption of me on Instagram where there was 2 physios just carrying me from one end of the room to the other. Still to this day, I look at that and think, I can't recognise that person. I couldn't ever see myself like that.
God, you've been through so much.
It's quite difficult. Like with everything with like your output and stuff, because I know you were saying it took you quite a long time to be able to change your own bag and that you was having the stoma nurses help you. Were the stoma nurses helping you once you went home as well?
So they did come to visit, but most of the help was whilst I was in hospital, to the point where they were showing me how to change it. When I went into rehab, the nurses were still changing it then, but they were instructing me in how I would do it once I get home. But I changed from kind of like an open bag to a closed one once I was at home. So that transition kind of had to learn myself. But I did have discussions with the stoma nurse about making that transition when it would happen. So they did come and visit me once, I think in the first 6 months, to talk me through all of that.
Yeah, because I can imagine with everything that was going on, especially post-sepsis recovery, staph infection, pneumonia, that your stoma changed size quite a lot. Just a little curious, because you have a colostomy, and typically colostomies are bigger than an ileostomy.
Yeah.
So what size is your colostomy? Is it quite small?
It was measured last time around 32. I know there's a size metric. I can't, whether that's centimetres or not.
Millimetres. Yeah, no, it's
millimetres, yeah.
But I should imagine when you first had it done, it was quite swollen. So if it's 32 millimetres now, it would have been a lot bigger. It's amazing how quick
it shrinks back.
And goes down to what size it's going to be. I mean, it can change size with hydration, dehydration.
Yeah.
Well, only recently, say about a month ago, I went to the hospital to see my stoma nurse, and they measured it, and it actually had increased a couple of millimetres. So it kind of goes up and down depending on, as you said.
It's normally based on fluids. So if you're dehydrated, your stoma shrinks.
Yeah.
If you're hydrated, your stoma does swell up a little bit.
So for those of you that don't already follow Mo, he is the king of graphics. And I don't think there's another ostomate with a account for raising awareness like yours. I mean, it stands out. It's fantastic. We love it.
I mean, the graphics that he did the other day for becoming Response ambassador, that was like, I thought Response had done it, and then I had to do it. I was like, that's not Response marketing.
That's his own work. It's amazing. Where'd you get your inspiration from?
Other Instagram users, to be honest with you. Follow various charities and influencers, and I just look at what they're doing within their own niche and just think, how can I translate that to stoma or ostomates?
I noticed within your graphics you have a lot of ribbons. Now, are they awareness ribbons or are they just part of the graphic design?
Graphic that I got designed especially for my branding, as it were. So you'll see it's a rainbow of all the different cancer ribbons.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you. And yeah, I just got that made up because I just saw that, you know, as much as I'm trying to represent bowel cancer, ostomates and everything, you know, it's just trying to do work in the wider communities.
So you're not just here to raise awareness of stomas, you're here to raise awareness for much more than that. So do you want to share with us what it is that you're trying to do on your page?
So I'm an advocate for many things, including cancer, ostomates, representation within the ethnic minority groups as well, and in the disability areas as well. That's something that I want to get into going into this year. So I've worked with Bowel Cancer UK previously. I've been lucky, I guess, to be a part of their campaigns. they've been kind enough to have my story told in the likes of Chat Magazine and the Sunday Mirror. And so I raised money for them, which was amazing. Did their Active April campaign.
And it wasn't that long ago you were learning to walk again, was it? And already you've done all this, which is amazing.
Can I ask you, how was it? Because obviously with your story going into something like the Sunday Mirror or going into Chat Magazine, how did you feel with the feedback? Because I know, obviously, that kind of story being made public can receive positive as well as negative feedback from the community, ostomy community, cancer community. How did you feel that your story went across? How do you feel that it helped other people?
Well, I hope it did. I mean, I received nothing but positive reviews, and I only kind of selfishly focus on a very small circle, which is what I can control.
Yeah.
My family, whatever else happens in and around that, I guess, is out of my control. And although I haven't received any negative feedback, if I were, then, my purpose is education.
And shame on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a great way to see it because, I mean, the three of us put ourselves out there. We share a lot of ourselves that isn't typical for the everyday person. So
it's daunting to begin with. When I started writing my blog, I never thought that people would read it, let alone give me feedback.
Yeah.
So to put yourself out there is challenging. I was nervous coming here. But once you've broken that seal, I think for me, it's the next goal. Where can I go next? How can I affect people in a positive way? So doing this for the first time, I don't know, maybe it's an area that I'll explore going forward.
Definitely. And you're now an ambassador for Respond, as we are, which is brilliant. So you're welcomed into the family.
Thank you.
And so how did that go about? And why did you want to be one as well?
It's a good question. For me, I didn't really know that you could change your supplier, the dispenser for your stoma products. When I saw Mary Rose's account talking about Respond, and she had a link in her bio for me to make inquiries, and I filled out a very short questionnaire, and I thought, it could only get better because my previous supplier had so many issues with them in the past, whereby sometimes I would be left without my products, an email would be left unread, or the products themselves would go missing upon dispatching. And there was 3 occasions where I had to rearrange my colonoscopy because they would send me the wrong bags.
No.
So
It's just not okay, is it?
I actually went online and purchased some bags.
No,
No.
that
I
is
know.
not okay. That no one should ever be put in that position.
But that's what it was. I was just sick and tired because I had foolishly taken the prep thinking that the bags would arrive at some point, which they didn't. I mean, when I opened the box, there were the different bags, and I'm thinking, I've just taken the prep. So what am I going to do now? So it was a mess. Luckily, we've got a shower room, so we could wash it all down. But I was fed up of the supplier. I was despising having a stoma at that stage.
I can imagine.
Because I was having so many issues with the bags themselves. But upon seeing Mary Rose on Instagram, clicking the link, filling out the questionnaire, and then the next day I got a phone call from a lovely associate.
Do you remember their name? Can you do a shout out?
I don't. I remember sending the email to say I could find it.
No, it's okay. You don't have to. It's okay. So, I had a lovely call from Jo today, and she's lovely.
I think they all are. They've all
I've never met
lovely.
a bad egg. I used to get a lot of calls from Kerry.
I think there's a Beth in the London office that I seem to get a lot.
Yeah. And James.
I've never had an issue, so...
Nah, they're all brilliant, aren't they?
They're marvellous. They really are.
But you shouldn't have been made to feel like that. And you know, there's lots of reasons why you can not feel happy with your stoma that's out of your control, but the reasons you just said, they shouldn't have happened, and there was no reason for it to happen, was there? So that's you
shouldn't be made to feel of despising a bag or despising your stoma because of bad service, basically.
No.
It did, but it was an opportunity whereby I made that call.
And you turned it into a positive.
Yeah, spoke to two lovely ladies from the customer service team who not only took note of the products that I was using, but also got to know me as a person and, you know, talked about how active I am, what bags would I benefit from, what types of other products would work for me and my skin type. So I was introduced to, you know, flange extenders, vitamin E adhesive removers and wipes. So
God bless the dry wipes.
Mary Rose was this gateway, and it just opened.
All hail Mary Rose! We love you, Mary Rose.
And the only disappointing thing from the get together, which was an absolute, I mean, it blew my expectations. It was just an amazing event, and all the people there, including yourselves. Not just saying that whilst you're here. But yeah, it's not
Thanks,
having met Mary Rose and thanked her for it. So thank you, Mary Rose.
And she, you know what? She's one of those. You know, she comes across so beautifully on her platform, but she's even nicer in person.
She's a sweetheart.
She's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
But I mean, we've exchanged words over social media, and you know, she was. I did ask her the question before I accepted the invitation to try and get an idea of what it's like, what is the world of you know, the ostomates, and get together, and also got in touch with Keith, and can't forget Keith.
Fellow Welshman.
And it's just nothing but praise. So yeah, I got to meet one of my heroes. Keith,
that's cute. Yeah, but the thing is, Mo, you're already going to be other people's heroes.
I hope so.
Definitely,
mainly my children.
100%.
You know,
100%.
they can look up to me and go, you know what, we're proud of you.
Definitely.
Then I think that's a job well done.
I mean, I think all of us as ambassadors, we are like family, aren't we? We all get on really well.
That's the sense I got.
To quote the brand, but it's a family.
It's a family.
It really is. It really is. And it lives up to it.
I know, like, it actually is. Like, it sounds corny and it sounds a bit ick saying it out loud like it, but it is. It is, and it's lovely to be part of.
I think the type of people that we are, though, as well, and the way all of us are as a group, I kind of feel like now within the ostomy community that everybody's kind of catered for and represented. We're not all put across as picture perfect. We've all got our flaws and scars and issues, and I feel like we're kind of, for a company, I think we're more representative as ambassadors for the ostomy community as a whole. So,
Mo, what advice would you give to someone who doesn't feel like they're being represented? What advice could you give them?
Just break that seal. Just put yourself out there, because you open yourself up to criticism. But that's how you learn. But since I've done it, I've got nothing but praise. There's been a few, but I think if you look at what I'm trying to do, trying to make a positive impact in all the fields that I'm working with. But for me, it's reaching out as well. Just talk. If I hadn't had spoken or exchanged messages with Keith or Mary Rose, then I don't think I would be sitting here today. I would have declined the invitation purely because I thought it would be nothing more than a Kardashian episode, but it wasn't. It was lovely.
We are far from the. We are far from
What
the
flattering,
Kardashians.
Mo. I mean, you can come back. Oh, I love Mo. Sorry, previous, but he's my fave.
I mean, you were saying that you felt that, as you've quoted yourself, being an ethnic minority, that you're not represented enough across the community, whether it be the cancer community, stoma community. You feel that you're not represented enough. How do you feel, obviously now being an ambassador for Respond, how do you feel about that?
Well, I'm glad I took the leap to get involved. I never intended to become an ambassador. I
don't think any of us intended to be.
No. Why? No.
What I did was I sent an email to say that, I've received the service from these two individuals. They were lovely. They were great. And I received my delivery promptly and everything was there. Fantastic. 2 thumbs up. But I also looked at what was being represented on Respond's website. So if I saw the page where they promote their ambassadors, I didn't really see anyone like me. So I kind of just prompted them to say, it'd be great if you can have someone from, say, an ethnic minority group. I never intended that would be me. I was just merely pointing them in a direction. But when I was invited and when I was asked to become an ambassador, I couldn't say no. My children were saying, just do it. It'll be great.
They must be so proud of you.
Absolutely. And as I said, that's my life ambition, for them to be proud of me.
See, the thing is, you've put yourself out there, you've crossed that barrier, and by you crossing that barrier, you could potentially help someone else who may have been in a similar situation to you to also cross that barrier.
Absolutely.
So it's about raising awareness and helping those that may not feel as confident or as open as you did at the time.
Yeah. I think it takes a generation, but we're at a stage now where I think we can make up ground for what's been lacking in the past. I mean, I've done my own research, and if I quote a few, if you don't mind.
Sure, that's not a
so
problem.
the likes of Bowel Research UK state that ethnic minority groups have historically been underrepresented in the IBD, or inflammatory bowel disease, research here in the UK. In fact, when it comes to medical trials, more than 90% of the patients are Caucasian. And what they're seeing is that there is a rise in the number of cases of people from ethnic minority groups who are being diagnosed with AIBD.
Yeah.
But still there's so little information there. And they're struggling to really figure out what to do. I mean, even the likes of Crohn and Colitis UK, another charity, who say exactly the same thing. They confirm that IBD is growing amongst people within the ethnic minority groups. They say that not only is the research limited, it's also outdated.
It's also very flawed. I know from personal experience with IBD. I go to St Thomas's, I go to Guy's Hospital. I'm London based. There are a lot of students in there who are doing research for CC UK or Bowel UK. They're giving people these questionnaires to fill in whilst they're having immunosuppressant therapy, and not necessarily going down to the colorectal units or the GI units to see anybody else down on those to give them. It's just literally a small demographic that are normally quite young that are being targeted within the chemotherapy unit for treatment for IBD, and they're not tackling the wider populace.
No.
It's very limited. incredibly limited.
I mean, there's certainly people that are trying. I know if I just quote one more.
Yeah, sure.
The British Journal of Nursing state that the issue lies, and they say this. They've done a study which looks into the engagement within ethnic communities with regards to screening programs for cancer. And that study says that the screening service is a critical component of cancer prevention and early detection. However, individuals from deprived areas or non-white areas are less likely to engage with the UK's National Cancer Screening Service. They go on to mention the reasons why, and it's very much around awareness.
Yeah.
They state there a lack of education, knowledge, and awareness within those communities. I wrote here cultural determinants, which they say it could be religion, could be cultural. It could also be the kind of social attitudes within those communities.
Yeah.
The stigma that they may feel towards either being diagnosed or the possibility of having cancer. But it also includes the fear of having cancer and the fear of the potential outcome, which death. So because of these kind of negative attitudes, I think we need to really penetrate those.
It does need to be penetrated, but when you were saying with regards to cultural and generation, and with it changing within a generation, so my nan's 80, my nan's had bowel cancer, my nan's bowel was totally destroyed by the radiation therapy, and my nanny's incontinent, but she will not have a stoma.
Yeah.
She refuses to have a stoma because she's not having one of those, but it's okay for me.
Yeah.
And I've spent the last 10 years trying to get my nan to go in and have the surgery because they've told her she needs to have it. It will make her quality of life better. And she's like, no, not doing it, not having it. No, not even thinking about it. Yeah. And it's absolutely crazy. Yet she'll talk to all her friends, and all her old friends that have got IBD or have had stoma surgery are all messaging me on Facebook from my nan's Facebook, asking me for advice and tips. Yet my nan will not go and have it done. It's ludicrous.
I think it's I've got a friend who I didn't even know, but after coming out of hospital and getting back on my feet, I visited the shop that he works in, and I explained to him, because he could see it through my T-shirt, this pouch, and he said, do you mind if I ask, is that a stoma? And I said, yeah. And he's like, what's it like to live with? So I explained the kind of pros and cons that I have experienced. And he said that he's been living with Crohn's and in agony for a number of years, but although he's been advised to go down that route and have a stoma, he's decided against it because there is that stigma, there is that association that, I think there's people that don't want to talk about their health and think that is itself seen as like a health issue.
Yeah.
There is a lot of generational gaps. We come from a generation, especially like being born in the 80s, growing up through the 90s. We're a generation that have discovered the internet and are kind of quite open to talking and discussing things.
You can't underestimate that. It's so different to what was prior.
Yeah, whereas my mum loves me. She wants to look after me and my health, but I don't talk about my bag in front of her.
Really?
Yeah. My family, so my aunt and my cousin, absolutely supportive, can go swimming with them. If somebody's staring at me, they'll have a go at them. But my mum won't talk about it. She'll talk about the time I almost died, or talk about the fact that I need to be sorted out, but we don't talk about poo. But me and my brother, me and Ben, we've got really bad toilet humour. It's like to the point of people sat there listening, really, you guys are really going into that.
I think though, like if you've got a bowel condition and like say the two people in my household both have stomas, if you don't have toilet humour that's to the line, then there's, it's
so
more.
We're all sat there talking about toilet humour. My mum's like, shut up, go away, don't talk about it. I'm a carer, I have to deal with that in my day-to-day without you guys talking about it.
So Mo, what's it like being an ostomer in your community? Can you share with us a little insight?
Yeah, I mean, with regards to myself, as far as I'm aware, I'm the only one to have a stoma, carry that around with me. If you look at the religion where it states that, you fast for a month, Ramadan. For me, I'm exempt because of the medication that I'm on. But if I wasn't, then I guess it would probably make my life easier because I'm only eating certain times of the day. I only need to change my pouch once a day. Yeah. So for me, it worked quite well. I think the only issue surrounding it is, when you're in a mosque and people are praying silently and the stoma decides to erupt.
Gosh, yeah, of course.
And they're kind of looking around to go, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Then it's having that discussion and opening up about it. I wear it with pride.
Yeah.
I don't mind standing there in T-shirt and as I rest my hands on it to pray. It's it does create conversation.
Has your faith helped you on this journey more than, have you had to lean on it a lot more than you, say, would have in your day-to-day life?
Absolutely. I think the whole journey through the point at which I was diagnosed and, having to ask for strength to tell my mother about having cancer after her life partner just passed away, and to talk about it with my children after they've been introduced with the concept of death, and then going through all of that, thinking, I can't see an end to this. And I think it was just people that, not just my faith, but people hoping and praying for me. Yeah. Because I know family, friends that went to Saudi Arabia and visited the religious cities of Mecca and Medina. And they say they prayed for me there. And, that gives me strength too. And I leaned on the parish as well at the hospital. It wasn't just the imam, it was the Father Michael there as well. And we sat there and he prayed for me, and people with all kind of different religious beliefs sent me their prayers and wishes. So I'm very, very grateful for that.
Oh, that's lovely.
That's beautiful. Well, Mo, I think you're doing a brilliant job with representation, and I think you should give yourself a massive pat on the back. And thank you so much for being our third guest.
Pleasure.
And thank you to anyone that has tuned in to our third episode of Beyond the Pouch. And we will catch you again next time.
So we'll see you soon.
Next episode. Thanks, Mo. Bye.
Thanks, bye.